Hello, welcome to Throw Starfish. Today we're going to be talking about bullet journal trackers and tracking in general. So we're going to be looking at how we track our daily habits, our monthly habits, and what some of the things are that we find really useful tracking. So thanks for listening again. My name's Ruth.
My name's Penny.
And I'm Johnny. And today, as we said, we're going to be talking... our original idea was to talk about bullet journal trackers, which both me and Ruth use, but Penny doesn't have the same amount of appreciation or use for. And that got us talking about, actually, we track quite a lot of things in our lives. So I think all three of us use MyFitnessPal.
Yep.
At least sporadically, if not religiously. And I know I track my sleep, sometimes just with a timer, but sometimes also quality of with an app to get some idea based on how much I move in my sleep, how the quality of sleep I'm getting. And there's probably a number of other things that we actually pay attention to and reference in order to be able to measure how we're doing and whether we're making progress or not.
And I think it's just worth mentioning here that if you're this might be the first time you've come across Throw Starfish and you're thinking, what is bullet journaling? What is tracking? Well, if you look back on our feed, you will find a lovely podcast and a load of blog content around bullet journaling. So if that at this point is like, what on earth is that? Stop. Go back and listen to the bullet journaling. So when we started to talk through bullet journaling, we realised, particularly me and Johnny, we have a lot of trackers, and particularly when I first started bullet journaling, I started tracking everything. I had all my Miracle Morning stuff. I had like a cleaning tracker. I had
a
cleaning tracker. So I made sure that I cleaned the house. I had a list of jobs per room, and across the month I tried to do them all.
Oh, did that look pretty?
It looked really pretty, and it was a nightmare.
Did you spend more time tracking it than you did cleaning, or?
No, it made me clean. It did make me clean. Other times I've tracked my training
Did you stick
for
it on
swimming.
the fridge?
No, I had it in my bullet journal. I didn't put it on the fridge. But yeah, so it got us thinking about things that we track. Johnny's currently opening his bullet journal to the most beautifully ornate tracking page, and I'm starting to worry. I have nothing in front of me. I'm just doing this from memory, guys. I'm winging it, and you've got all your trackers in front of you.
I've just got the two logos of my apps. I am the oldest in the room, and I use apps for my tracking.
I do think that's funny that there's like the two, those in their 20s and 30s are like,
in the interest of stereotyping.
Let's tick it off.
You millennials, you.
I don't think
You're
I'm
not a
really classed as
millennial.
a millennial.
You've not gotten anything, have you?
Just 80s child, that's the best.
You're a millennial.
I don't know, I'm just really young all the time. I'm always going to be really young.
I am, in my head, 25. In my head, I am a millennial.
So, trackers.
With a shopping trolley.
You were telling us about the apps that you use.
Yeah, so in terms of... I do track things in my bullet journal, but not in a tracker. So, for example, always constantly trying to improve a habit on something. Currently, it's water and Pomodoro. So in the morning I put out 7 little glass jars on my tracker.
And by the end of the day you fill that one.
Yes.
How did I know that?
But on Pomodoro, I'm really, really getting into Pomodoro now. I'm just making it work for me. So I have tomatoes.
Also, as Ruth mentioned about the bullet journaling podcast, there is also a Pomodoro podcast you can listen to if you don't know what that is.
And I still don't get it.
That's fine. That's the point of our podcasting,
know,
is that we
I
have
know,
three
but I'd
different
love
perspectives and we don't all do the same thing, and hopefully that's what makes this three-way conversation interesting.
Well, in the Pomodoro podcast, I wasn't really into it, and it was only through needing to write my my blog journal up that I then started to think, actually I've missed a trick, so I've simplified it. So Ruth, I recommend you go and have a look at my blog when it comes out.
Oh, Penny, I'd love to look at your blog.
I will track you.
Behave.
So, Johnny, make us all feel inadequate. Tell us what you track.
It's not about making people feel inadequate. It's like you say, and hopefully what we all do is we try things and we work out what works for us, and if that's useful and works for us, then you use it.
there is also research that shows, and I think it's one of those business quotes, and I'm going to totally misquote it, but it's that whole thing of like, what you measure moves. Is that right? So essentially, like,
That sounds like a business quote.
Do you like it?
No.
But it's the whole idea of whatever you track and whatever you focus on is often the things we get better at.
Oh god,
I think
Penny's
the
got
quote.
the line.
I think the quote you were looking for,
Oh, God.
ladies and gents, was, "If you don't measure it, you can't manage it."
Oh gosh, that sounds awful.
I know.
Probably.
I
That's
like
probably
your one
exactly.
better. If you don't measure it, it moves.
What is it? No, it's whatever you measure moves. That's right. Yeah, whatever you measure moves.
like that.
Sounds like a page in a self-help book.
Sorry,
So?
back to yours. What do you measure and what moves, Johnny?
So the things that seem to move and I can try and keep a track of, I'm just looking down my list of things here. I track my sleep by the number of hours that I've had, and I keep an eye on the start and finish time of my sleep in order to work out obviously the gap in between and the length that I've slept for. I also put that into my Google Calendar, so I have a visual reference of it, so I can go, oh look, you're not getting to bed early enough.
Which is interesting because we are going to do a podcast on sleep, and I'm sure James would be really interested to look at
Yeah.
your little trackers.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he'd be horrified. I also keep a track of the deficit that I write in 2 different colours. The majority of the time it's in red because I have a number of minutes deficit.
Minutes, not hours. I expect you to.
Well, I write it in
Yeah.
minutes, so, well,
What are you currently
the last
on?
week I'm looking at here, it's gone 15-minute deficit, 120-minute deficit, 45-minute deficit, 60 minutes over, 45 minutes over, 180 minutes deficit, and that's based on an average aim to do 7 hours a night sleep. And I also try and keep track of a week-long, an overarching week average to see how that balances out, because obviously sometimes you have to get up super early in the morning to go to Future Fest and get a train at 5 a.m. in the morning like we did the other week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I also keep track of, sorry, this is a bit of a long list, but I keep track of quite a long stuff. My Miracle Morning, so I track whether I do it or not, and because I don't always do it, like we've said before, we're not all perfect at this stuff, and I track the 6 things in that, which are my headspace, my morning incantations, my visualization, my exercise, my reading, and my journal. I also have a set of evening incantations that I do very irregularly according to this tracker. I track the number of bits of fruit and veg I eat every day. I track the amount of water I consume. I track the amount of alcohol I consume. And on and off, I do keep a track of how many hours work I do. But I also have just thought of another thing that I track on another app, which is Timesheet. And I keep a track of my hours on all the different projects I work on.
And how do you actually do any work? Because it sounds like all you're doing is tracking.
Well, all of those things are basically a tick or a cross in a box.
See, I thought I was a serial tracker. Like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm a serial tracker. I have an issue, but I'm not. I'm perfectly normal. Like, the amount of things you track, does that not? Like, I love tracking, but does that not just get so tiring?
Not at all. When I wake up in the morning and I'm using my bullet journal to plan my day and work out and do my Pomodoro thing, obviously I do, right, this is the time you went to sleep, this is the time you get up, that puts in your sleep, and that therefore allows me to work out my sleep deficit. I mean, that takes
Yeah, I can do the
20
maths bit,
seconds,
but
yeah.
it just there's a lot of different elements.
And when I do my Miracle Morning, obviously that takes, I don't know, 45 minutes for start to finish, spending an additional 45 seconds on the end of that, ticking what I've done and writing down what I've done, that's more than half my tracker's done, and it's taken me less than a minute.
That's, you know, I just think when, I mean, I'm a tracker, and when I hear you say these things on the podcast, it freaks me out. I get like shivers. I'm like,
Extreme tracker.
extreme tracker, yeah.
Ray Mears would be proud.
Ray Mears would be proud.
So you track it all. What benefits do you get from it? Because I'm like thinking this is extreme.
Well, it's not really that extreme.
It is, listeners, isn't it?
No, well, they can't answer back, which is great. 'cause
Oh,
they're
yes, they
probably
can.
nodding.
Comments.
They're probably nodding.
Downstairs.
Well, it basically,
Downstairs.
I suppose that's a good question for us to ask ourselves overall, is this idea that what benefit to get out of it, because it's not super data mining insight, but it allows me to gauge general trends over time, and especially when I do my week average of my sleep and stuff, hopefully it's heading towards my average fall asleep time, my average wake up time, and my average amount of sleep. And if you don't track it, I find that you go, oh, I'm feeling a bit down today or a bit rubbish and stuff. And then I look back and go, well, that's because you've missed out on an hour's sleep a night every night for the last 6 nights, which means you're almost a full night's sleep worth down on where you should be. you've been going in and out of meetings all day, which basically means the liquid you're consuming is coffee rather than water. You've not been hydrating properly. And because you've been eating out and grabbing sandwiches on the go and stuff, you've actually been doing sort of 2-3 bits of fruit and one veg on your day, rather than what I like to do, which is when I feel like I'm at my best. When I forget 5 a day, I do 9, 10, 11 fruit and veg a day. And being able to go, I feel like this, what could the reason be? And compare the two, there's a direct correlation between the times I eat better and have more sleep and the times that I'm not feeling great and underperforming and I haven't had those things.
I do agree with you on that. I know we've sat and kind of bullied you a little bit and taken the mick out of it, but I do think that I track more things when I'm feeling either like, oh, like I feel like I've not got much energy, or I haven't done much exercise, or I'm not eating well. And as soon as I start tracking it, it gives me that motivation to actually go, okay, well, I'm going to, oh, look, I haven't done. And the same with things like MyFitnessPal. Like you look at it and you go, oh, actually, I've probably not had enough protein today, or I need to have more fruit and veg.
And you say that about My Detail, the amount of things that you have to input into MyFitnessPal to get an accurate reading.
That's
is
very true.
Like 10 to 15 things per meal, let alone like just 10 to 15 things overall on your day.
Yeah, okay, that is true. And I think for me, I tend to kind of choose different trackers for each month. So there are very few things that I do every month, but one of the trackers that I do, which is probably my most useful tracker, and if I was only going to do one of them, it would definitely be this one. What I do is I take all my projects and I have a little heading and I have key things that happen across the week. So obviously one of my biggest issues is making sure that I spend enough time on all my businesses or projects. And so when key things happen, you know, if I do a talk at something or I have a really good sales conversation, I put that in my tracker. And what that allows me to see is at the end of the week I can go, oh, okay, so I've moved all these projects on this far. Or, oh, I need to focus on doing something for this business because I haven't done anything this week for them. And that just allows me to keep things moving forward and then to go back and see, oh, actually, I feel like nothing's happened. But 2 weeks ago, the big thing was that I'd done this. And now look at all the things I've done.
With me, I tend to use trackers in 2 ways. So I suffer from ME, which means that I absolutely must pace myself. And I'm pretty sure that without the trackers, I would get far less done. So I use that as a means of motivating, and I've got like, you know, my things that I really must get done and find time for. But there are also things that I find really, really helps keep me going. But the discipline of keeping them going is often challenging. So I actually use online an app that's got my basic habits, so things like my miracle morning, the Pomodoro technique, my bullet journaling. I track when I'm doing those, and whilst I might not be diligent doing it, when I start to feel that I'm going into a bit of a relapse, that's when I pull those out, and it can often make it pass very, very quickly.
And I think that is perhaps the most significant idea behind keeping this tracking stuff, because it can seem like an obsessive, geeky OCD only for certain people, delving into depths of information. But as far as losing weight, diet, health goes, of all the fads and different things that there are, scientifically, time and time again, the one thing that makes a difference, a genuine difference, that means people are able to lose weight, keep it off, or maintain a healthy lifestyle, is keeping a food journal. And time again, in every study, when comparing different ways of losing weight or keeping healthy, setting the challenge, and you can do this in the most simplest way, and this is the proof as it's cited in so many papers, is that the challenge is to keep a food diary 1 day a week to start with. And although you're doing it over time, that habit, which we'll do a podcast on because there's loads of stuff we can talk about around habits, but tracking what you eat changes your mindset and your thinking about how you approach food in a way that over time genuinely gives you an intervention on yourself that changes the way you eat. And that's not because you become a health freak and you go to the gym religiously and have nothing else to do or talk about. it's because it just gets you thinking about it. And even on the days off you have, when you do go out to the pub and have too many pints or wines or spirits, or indulge in a pizza, which when you actually look at the number of calories per slice, let alone the whole thing, which you all polish off like you do with the packet of sweets or the packet of biscuits, it means it changes your mindset about how you approach things, which means the majority of the time you end up focusing on the things that do actually keep you healthy. But you only get that by, it's not tracking, it's getting an insight into the actual information.
I think sometimes as well, it encourages you, because you want to tick off that box as well. You want to look back and go, okay. So one of the things that I regularly go in and out of tracking is the amount of exercise that I do. I swim a lot, I do a lot of exercise, but I don't always have time. And I often find myself feeling quite disappointed in myself if I'm at a meeting at the same time I should be in the pool training. So for me, sometimes I'll have like a little challenge to do. Maybe it's a few press-ups, or it's a 15-minute workout, or it's a little run, or it's across 2 weeks aiming to do a set amount of miles running or something. Just a little challenge that makes me prioritize it. But also, I then don't feel like I've let myself down because I'm doing something towards it. And I think it's a really interesting way to actually create this feeling of moving forwards.
I think there's something very motivating about giving yourself challenges and tracking them as well. So I had an accident, so I was on crutches for quite a while, and I'm now in a place where I can start taking on exercise. But I know that I need to build up to that so I don't pull my hamstring again. So I've set myself a goal for this month of, it's really simple and it works beautifully with the 6-minute miracle morning, of just doing 60 seconds of exercise every day. Now that really motivates me, and what often happens is I know that when I use my habit tracker app later on today, when I go to bed, because I have a nighttime routine, I will go, oh, I have not done my 60 seconds, and I will do, because it's so quick to fit in, and I know that that's going to be part of my recovery and fitness.
I think that's the flip side of this idea that basically what is happening when you track something is that you're looking back and recording what you've done. What that actually results in is giving you an actual insight into the time scale that you actually do things over, and the rate in which you're actually able to change things, which therefore when you're looking forward, you plan the way that you're going to do things differently. You set yourself reasonable targets and challenges, and you do them over the time, acknowledging that everything takes time. So you don't, despite the world we live in being so instantaneous in so many ways and constantly being exposed to information, which is why life seems to get quicker and faster all of the time for everyone, and time seems to fly by because you're bombarded by information. It gives you that checking point that means you go, right, I know how long it takes to do this because I've been tracking it, and therefore when I set myself a target, I'm going to put that at a reasonable point in the future as my milestone that I'm aiming for. And we were talking about this the other day. We haven't told Ruth about this, but we got a suggestion for a challenge for another podcast, which is this
Love a challenge.
100 days target. So there's roughly 100 days in 3 months. So we thought it'd be interesting to set ourselves a goal that we were trying to achieve and put it ahead 3 months, because the idea is that 3 months is roughly 100 days, and all you have to do is something to get yourself 1% closer to that each day. That may seem like an infinitesimally small step, but actually over 3 months and that 100 days, you complete quite a big task.
Interesting.
And what inspired it was, Johnny having mentioned it, we needed to, for our project Save Mount Pleasant, we needed to secure the services and support of a few people. So a couple of phone calls and I'd secured us a pro bono architect. Ooh, I would have sat for months normally had Johnny had not come up with that as a concept. So it's like, yeah, we've ticked one thing off on this humongous project. So right, 99% could go. But what I was going to say is, if you do use trackers, my top tip, because I think we need to probably wrap things up now, don't we? My top tip would be, I find that I stay on top of trackers and use them more when I have a nighttime routine. So I close down my day and then I can figure out what I've not yet done. But I start my closing down my day at a sensible time. So if there are things that I've forgotten to do or not had time to do, I can fit them in, because I don't want to break the chain, which is the app that I've got. Basically you build a chain up which helps you motivate you to keep your habits. So that's my top tip, Ruth.
Mine would probably be, so the nice thing about when you're tracking your bullet journal is that you can set them up to be weekly trackers or a monthly tracker. And when I first started bullet journaling, I tried quite a few. I probably tried too many and I couldn't complete them all. You know, I liked the idea of writing down 3 things each day that made me thankful. I liked the idea of ticking off my miracle morning. I liked, you know, so I think it's possibly better just to choose one thing to track. Choose one tracker that interests you, whether it's to do with health and fitness or a project or your sleep. Choose something that you want to improve, just one thing, and create a tracker around that, really.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing, is that it's not tracking things and creating tables and spreadsheets and flowcharts and pie charts, if you get that obsessive about it, and getting numbers just for the sake of having them. Like Ruth says, pick an area that you want to improve in, and it might be something like sleep. I mean, obviously we talk about food and health and exercise all of the time, but if there is one magic pill, in inverted commas, that can literally change your life, make or break it, it's sleep. And we're going to do a special podcast, our first interview on that very, very soon, with a sleep expert, a good friend of ours, James Wilson, who calls himself the sleep geek. He knows so much about it. But pick yourself something that you want to get an insight into, and it's really that old kind of phrase of knowledge is power. And it's down to if you use your MyFitnessPal to track stuff, which is obviously totally free, and you can use the input where you use the barcode scanner, which means it's loads easier to put information in, is that you all of a sudden get an insight into something like the amount of sugar you're actually consuming over a day, because it flashes up in a big red bar going, you have overstepped your target by 20 grams of sugar and it's only lunchtime. And you go, whoa, I had no idea I was drinking that amount of sugar or consuming that amount of sugar in everything that I do. So it's picking something that just an area you want to improve of, and finding something that enables you to measure it and give you information that allows you to, over time, make a change.
So yeah, I think we're coming to the end of our tracker podcast. So yeah, I think that sums up quite perfectly, you know, how you can start using trackers, that first step towards it. So thank you so much for listening. I'm Ruth.
I'm Penny.
And I'm Johnny, and we'll see you next time.